Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday edition of 10 with Tom. Maybe you've heard people say at some point in your life, don't build or don't burn bridges. Today we're talking about building bridges instead of burning them, and the importance that can have on our lives here on 10 with Tom. So the verse we want you to think about today comes from Romans chapter 12, verse 16, where Paul is telling the people, and it's good for us today, live in harmony with one another. Now, you might be working with some people that you don't necessarily like all that much. Or you may be in a situation where you know you're going to move on. Maybe you're in a job that you know isn't going to last forever. But yet it's important to maintain good relationships with the people that you're working with, because you never know when that can be a benefit to your life. I want to give you a great example of how that's worked out in my life and the importance of having those bridges built. When I was growing up, I had a couple of couples who had kids in our youth group who were our youth leaders. And one of the parents was the Judys, Bob and Shirley Judy. That was their last name, was Judy. And so they helped lead our youth group for years. And while I was away at college, they moved on to a new church. And I'm sure there were some people in the church where I was at that were very, very disappointed with the fact that they left. And how could you leave our church, because they were such strong members of our church? But they went and found a new church that was better for them and better for their family, and where they felt they were getting fed. And they did what God was calling them to do. And very quickly, Bob began to emerge as a leader in that new church. And so several years went by, and I didn't see them. And then there was another family that grew up in our church. Their names were Paul and Carol Love. Now, when I became a youth leader at the church where I grew up, my brother and a couple of Paul and Carol's kids, Andy and Amy, at the time, they were in the youth group. Andy and my brother Steve were really, really close friends. And so at the very beginning of my youth ministry, I had these kids, and we got to know them, and we weren't a big group, but everybody in there was such an intricate part of our group. But then Paul and Carol, the parents, decided they needed to go elsewhere as well. And so they left, and of course that meant that Andy and Amy left, which put a big dent into our youth group. But again, they were doing what they felt God was calling them to do. And so even though there were people who were very disappointed in their decision, we never burned that bridge. And my brother still managed to find times to get together with Andy and do things together, and our family stayed in touch, even though we were now in different churches. And as things would have it, a couple of years later, the church where Bob and Shirley and Paul and Carol were going, they needed a new youth director. The youth director was moving into a new position, an administrative position. And so they were looking for somebody in youth ministry. Bob, of course, is now on the board. Of course, they were very good friends with Paul and Carol. And they began to talk about how they knew somebody who they thought would be a good fit for the youth ministry program at this church. And so as the church began searching for a new leader for their youth program, they brought my name into the discussion. The youth pastor there, who was moving to a new position, had met me on one previous occasion when they had helped us to get something done, and it opened the doors for an interview. And I never applied for the job. They called me and said, hey, we have an opening and we would like to talk to you about it. And so as the process went on, I knew through the whole process I had an advocate on their board. And it was an advocate because it was somebody who knew me, but also because when they had left, we had not abandoned them, we had not burned any bridges. We knew what they were doing was what they felt God was calling them to do. And long story short, I got that job, had an incredible time of youth ministry at that new church, and it was an opportunity that wouldn't have existed had bridges been burned. Those connections were very important. You know, we hear it said a lot that in life, a lot of times, it's not what you know, but it's who you know. And there's so much truth to that. And so building a network of solid relationships is so important. You know, getting to know and appreciate the teachers that you have. Understanding that they're real people. Now, you never know when a teacher that you have might be able to write you a recommendation letter that you're going to need for college or for a job. And the more they know you, the better off you're going to be in the long run when they express what you can do. And that gets true as, you know, you move from college or a trade school and you're looking for a job. The people that you know can give you a good word that can get your foot in the door. Now, I can think of several interviews that I never would have had I not had a connection somewhere in the process. And so make connections, right? That's something that's so important for us. And when you leave somewhere, even if circumstances aren't perfect, don't burn the bridges behind you. Remember the good things. Say good things about the other people. Emphasize the positive, because people will remember that. They'll appreciate that, and it comes back to your benefit later on. Now, as we talk about the importance of building good relationships, there are some tips that can help us to constantly be building good relationships. Number one, even for those of you that are students and are younger, you probably have some friends that somewhere in your schooling have moved away. All right? But thanks to the wonders of social networking and our phones that we carry with us all the time, we can always reach out and make a reconnection. And it's so good to be able to reconnect. To call somebody or to text somebody or Skype somebody that you haven't seen in a long time and do some catching up. That happens to me so much through Facebook messaging. Being able to reconnect with friends from high school, friends from college, friends from years ago in youth ministry. Just this past week, we had a student of mine from a church many, many years ago who has a daughter that is considering Campbell University. And so her mom, my former student, asked, hey, does anybody know anything about Campbell University? Well, I was immediately able to contact another one of my students from a different youth group years later who graduated from Campbell University. The connections pay off. All right? But staying in touch with people is so important. If there's somebody that you think holds a grudge against you or somebody that you hold a grudge against, let it go. Make peace with people. Years from now, they are not going to remember those little things that they might have done that upset you. Let them go. All right? Be a peacemaker. Keep an awareness of all the things that you post online. For instance, don't post things that are critical or embarrassing about other people. Or don't post comments that are going to alienate your friends, your family, or potential business contacts or potential employers. You know, now more than ever, employers are going into social media and looking at the profiles of the people that they might hire. That can make a difference. So stay positive. Be genuine with people. We don't make connections just to be able to use those connections. Now, it's true that we do get to use them quite a bit, but let's be genuine with people. Show sincere personal interest in who they are and what they're about. Also, when you see something online that might help somebody else, let the people that it can help know about it. All right? Be a friend. If somebody's looking for a job and you see somebody's hiring and you think that's a good field, let them know. Don't assume they're just going to find all that on their own. Use your ability to be a contact to make their search a little easier. So all these things can help us move in a positive direction. All right? Make connections and do what you need to do to keep those connections flourishing. Because God wants us to be a connected people and to live in harmony with each other. Now, just real quickly, I want to remind everybody that this Sunday night, we've got youth group at 5, from 5 to 6:30, and senior highs only from about 6:45 to 7 up until 8 o'clock. We're over at Willie Jules gathering and having a good time. And so we invite all of you to come out and join us this weekend. Have a wonderful weekend. Finish the week strong, and we'll look for you Sunday morning in worship and Bible study. Have a great weekend. I love you guys. Talk to you real soon. Bye now.